Welcome to Lesson 1 of the Professional Certification Program on Biodiversity and Climate Resilience. When most people think about the natural world, they picture forests, rivers, wildlife, or fertile agricultural landscapes. Yet beneath every forest, every grassland, every farm, and every city lies an extraordinary living ecosystem that is often overlooked. That ecosystem is soil. Far from being simply dirt beneath our feet, soil is one of the most complex and biologically active environments on Earth. It is where minerals, water, air, organic matter, and billions of living organisms interact continuously to sustain life above and below the surface. Every tree that grows, every crop that feeds humanity, every forest that stores carbon, and every ecosystem that supports biodiversity ultimately depends on healthy soil. Although it forms only a thin layer covering much of the Earth's land surface, soil provides the foundation upon which terrestrial life depends. In recent decades, scientists have come to recognize that healthy soils play a central role in addressing some of humanity's greatest challenges. They support food security by sustaining agricultural productivity. They regulate water by storing rainfall, filtering pollutants, and replenishing groundwater. They provide habitat for an extraordinary diversity of organisms, many of which remain invisible to the naked eye. Healthy soils also store enormous quantities of carbon, helping to moderate Earth's climate and strengthen the resilience of natural and human systems. Understanding soils is therefore no longer the exclusive domain of soil scientists. It has become essential knowledge for professionals working in agriculture, forestry, biodiversity conservation, climate adaptation, environmental management, ecological restoration, land use planning, and sustainable development. In this lesson, we will explore soil as a living ecosystem rather than an inert growing medium. We will examine how soils form over hundreds to thousands of years through the combined influence of climate, geology, biology, landscape, and time. You will learn how scientists classify the remarkable diversity of soils found across the world and discover why different soil types support different ecosystems, agricultural systems, and ecosystem services. By the end of this lesson, you will understand why protecting soil diversity is fundamental to conserving biodiversity, strengthening climate resilience, ensuring food and water security, and supporting sustainable development. Our journey begins beneath the surface, where one of the planet's richest and most important living worlds is waiting to be discovered. When we look at the ground beneath our feet, it is easy to think of soil as an inert material, a mixture of sand, clay, and rock particles that simply anchors plants in place. Modern soil science tells a very different story. Healthy soil is a living ecosystem. It is a dynamic environment where physical, chemical, and biological processes operate continuously, creating one of the most complex and productive systems on Earth. Every handful of healthy soil contains an intricate network of minerals, organic matter, water, air, plant roots, fungi, bacteria, insects, and countless other organisms interacting every second of every day. These interactions are not random. Together, they regulate the movement of nutrients, store water, decompose organic matter, build soil structure, and sustain the productivity of entire ecosystems. 5 essential components make this living system possible. The first is mineral particles. Derived from weathered rock over long periods of time, minerals provide the physical framework of the soil. Sand, silt, and clay determine its texture, influence drainage, and supply many of the nutrients required by plants. The second component is organic matter. Fallen leaves, dead roots, animal remains, and other biological materials gradually decompose to form humus, a dark, carbon-rich substance that improves soil fertility, enhances water retention, and creates favorable conditions for soil organisms. The third component is water. Water fills many of the spaces between soil particles, dissolving nutrients and transporting them to plant roots. It also provides the moisture required for countless biological and chemical reactions that occur within the soil. Equally important is air. Healthy soils contain networks of interconnected pores filled with oxygen-rich air. Plant roots, fungi, bacteria, earthworms, and other organisms all depend upon this oxygen to survive. When soils become compacted or permanently waterlogged, these air spaces disappear, reducing biological activity and limiting plant growth. The fifth and perhaps most remarkable component is the living community itself. Billions of microorganisms and larger soil organisms transform what might otherwise be an inert mixture of minerals into a vibrant ecosystem capable of supporting life across the planet. Much of this biological activity is invisible to us, yet beneath every forest, grassland, wetland, and agricultural field exists an astonishing hidden world. Scientists estimate that a single teaspoon of healthy soil may contain billions of microorganisms representing thousands of different species. These include bacteria, fungi, protozoa, algae, microscopic animals, insects, mites, springtails, nematodes, and earthworms, each performing specialized functions within the soil ecosystem. Some organisms break down dead plant material, others release nutrients that become available to growing roots. Mycorrhizal fungi form extensive underground networks that connect with plant roots, increasing their ability to absorb water and nutrients while helping plants communicate and respond to environmental stress. Earthworms continuously mix organic matter with mineral soil, creating channels that improve aeration, drainage, and root penetration. Together, these countless organisms form an underground food web every bit as complex as the visible ecosystems above the ground. This hidden biological community also delivers services upon which human civilization depends. Healthy soils provide the physical foundation for agriculture by supplying plants with nutrients, water, and structural support. Without healthy soils, long-term food security would not be possible. Soils also regulate the movement of water across landscapes. During rainfall, healthy soils absorb and store large volumes of water, reducing surface runoff and flooding, while gradually releasing moisture to rivers, wetlands, and groundwater systems during drier periods. In this way, soils function as one of nature's most effective water management systems. Equally important is the continuous recycling of nutrients. Every fallen leaf, dead root, and decaying organism is transformed by soil life into nutrients that can once again be used by growing plants. This remarkable process has sustained terrestrial ecosystems for hundreds of millions of years. Healthy soils also represent one of Earth's largest terrestrial carbon reservoirs. Through photosynthesis, plants capture carbon dioxide from the atmosphere and transfer much of that carbon below ground through roots and organic matter. When soils remain healthy, much of this carbon is stored for long periods, helping to regulate the global climate. Finally, soils provide habitat for an extraordinary diversity of life. Countless organisms spend all or part of their life cycle within the soil, while many larger plants and animals depend indirectly upon healthy soils for food, water, and shelter. In this way, soil biodiversity supports biodiversity throughout entire ecosystems. The more we understand the hidden world beneath our feet, the more clearly we recognize that soil is not simply the foundation upon which ecosystems are built, it is itself one of the Earth's most important living ecosystems. In the next section, we will explore how this remarkable living system develops over time and discover the natural processes that create the extraordinary diversity of soils found across our planet. Healthy soil does not appear overnight. It is the result of an extraordinarily slow process that unfolds over hundreds, thousands, and sometimes even millions of years. Every soil on Earth tells the story of its environment, a story written by climate, geology, living organisms, landscape, and time. Soil formation begins with rock. Whether it is granite, basalt, limestone, sandstone, or another type of parent material, exposed rock gradually breaks down through the combined action of physical, chemical, and biological weathering. Temperature changes cause rocks to expand and contract. Water enters cracks, freezes, and slowly widens them. Wind, flowing water, and glaciers wear away exposed surfaces. Rainwater dissolves minerals, while plant roots and microorganisms release natural acids that further accelerate weathering. Over long periods, solid rock is transformed into smaller mineral particles that provide the foundation for future soils. However, weathered rock alone is not soil. As plants begin to colonize newly exposed surfaces, they produce leaves, stems, and roots that eventually die and decompose. Microorganisms, fungi, insects, and earthworms break this organic material into humus, enriching the developing soil with nutrients and organic carbon. Gradually, minerals and organic matter combine to create a living system capable of supporting increasingly complex plant and animal communities. Soil scientists describe this remarkable process using a simple but powerful framework known as the CLORPT model. The name comes from the 5 major factors that interact to produce every soil on Earth. The first factor is climate. Temperature and rainfall determine the rate of weathering, biological activity, and organic matter decomposition. Warm, wet climates generally produce faster soil development than cold or arid environments. The second factor is parent material, the rock or sediments from which the soil develops. Parent material influences soil texture, mineral composition, drainage characteristics, and the nutrients available for plant growth. The third factor is organisms. Plants, animals, fungi, bacteria, and countless other living organisms continually transform the soil. They add organic matter, recycle nutrients, create pore spaces, stabilize soil structure, and build the biological complexity that distinguishes living soil from weathered rock. The fourth factor is relief or topography. The position of soil on the landscape influences erosion, drainage, moisture, and exposure to sunlight. Soils on steep slopes often remain shallow because material is continually removed by erosion, while soils in valleys may become deep and highly fertile through the accumulation of sediments. The fifth factor is time. Soil formation is a gradual process. Young soils may show little horizon development, while older soils often display well-defined layers that reflect thousands of years of weathering, biological activity, and environmental change. None of these 5 factors works independently. Every soil is the result of their continuous interaction. Together, they create the extraordinary diversity of soils found across different climates, landscapes, and ecosystems around the world. As soils mature, they gradually develop distinct layers known as soil horizons. These horizons record the history of soil formation and reveal how materials have been transformed and redistributed over time. At the surface lies the O horizon, composed primarily of leaves, twigs, and other organic materials in various stages of decomposition. This layer provides energy for the organisms that drive nutrient cycling. Beneath it is the A horizon, commonly known as topsoil. Rich in humus and biological activity, it contains most of the plant roots and supports the greatest concentration of soil life. This is the layer upon which agriculture and most terrestrial ecosystems depend. In some soils, an E horizon develops below the topsoil. Here, water moving downward gradually removes clay, iron, and other minerals through a process known as leaching, leaving a lighter colored layer. Below this lies the B horizon or subsoil, where many of the materials leached from above accumulate. Clay, iron, aluminium, and other minerals become concentrated here, giving the subsoil characteristics that differ markedly from the surface layers. Further down is the C horizon, consisting of partially weathered parent material that has experienced relatively little biological activity. Finally, beneath all soil horizons lies the R horizon, or unweathered bedrock, from which the soil originally developed. Together, these horizons form the soil profile, a vertical record of environmental history that reflects thousands of years of interaction among climate, geology, living organisms, landscape, and time. Every soil profile is unique. By studying these layers, scientists can understand how soils formed, how they function, and how they should be managed to support agriculture, biodiversity, water resources, and climate resilience. In the next section, we will discover how soil scientists classify this remarkable diversity using the internationally recognized World Reference Base and explore representative soil groups found across the globe. Having explored how soils develop, we can now examine one of the most remarkable features of the Earth's surface, its extraordinary diversity of soils. No two landscapes are exactly alike. Climate varies from tropical rainforest to Arctic tundra. Rocks differ in their mineral composition. Vegetation ranges from grasslands and forests to wetlands and deserts. Mountains, valleys, floodplains, and volcanic landscapes all influence the way soils develop. As these environmental conditions change, so too do the soils that form beneath them. For scientists, understanding this diversity requires a common language. Just as biologists classify living organisms into groups based on shared characteristics, soil scientists classify soils according to their observable properties, their horizons, the materials from which they formed, and the processes that shape them. Soil classification allows researchers, farmers, foresters, engineers, conservationists, and policymakers to communicate consistently across countries and continents. It provides a framework for comparing soils, selecting appropriate land uses, improving agricultural productivity, conserving biodiversity, and planning for climate adaptation. Today, the internationally accepted system is known as the World Reference Base for Soil Resources, or simply the WRB. Rather than relying on local names, the WRB provides a standardized scientific framework that classifies soils into 32 reference soil groups. These groups represent the major types of soils found across the globe and enable scientists to describe soils using a common international language. The WRB is used by governments, universities, international organizations, and land managers around the world. It supports everything from agricultural planning and forestry to watershed management, ecological restoration, and global climate research. While the complete system contains 32 reference soil groups, this lesson introduces 8 representative examples that illustrate the extraordinary range of soil environments found on Earth. The first group is fluvisols. These young soils develop along rivers and floodplains where seasonal flooding deposits fresh layers of sediment. Because rivers continually replenish nutrients, fluvisols are among the most productive agricultural soils in many parts of the world. They support intensive cultivation of cereals, vegetables, fruits, and many other crops, making river valleys some of humanity's oldest agricultural landscapes. Very different are histosols, which develop in permanently wet environments such as peat bogs, marshes, and wetlands. Waterlogged conditions slow decomposition, allowing organic matter to accumulate over thousands of years and form deep peat deposits. Although peatlands occupy only a small proportion of the Earth's land surface, they store enormous quantities of carbon and provide habitat for highly specialized plants and animals. Protecting these soils is therefore essential for both biodiversity conservation and climate change mitigation. Another distinctive group is the vertisols. These clay-rich soils behave in remarkable ways. During dry seasons, they shrink, producing deep cracks that can extend far below the surface. When rainfall returns, the clay expands again, closing the cracks. This continual expansion and contraction creates challenges for agriculture and engineering, but also contributes to naturally fertile soils when managed appropriately. In volcanic regions, a completely different soil develops. Andosols originate from volcanic ash and other volcanic materials. Rich in minerals and organic matter, these soils possess excellent water-holding capacity and often support highly productive agriculture. Coffee plantations, orchards, vegetable production, and mountain forests frequently flourish on these fertile volcanic landscapes. Among the world's most productive agricultural soils are the Chernozems. Developed beneath temperate grasslands over thousands of years, these soils contain thick, dark topsoil rich in organic matter. Their excellent structure, moisture retention, and natural fertility have made them the foundation of grain production across many regions of Europe, Asia, and North America. At the opposite end of the climatic spectrum are the feral soils. These ancient tropical soils have undergone millions of years of intense weathering under warm, humid conditions. Most easily weathered minerals have already been removed, leaving deep red soils rich in iron and aluminium oxides. Although tropical rainforests growing on feral soils appear extraordinarily productive, much of the ecosystem's nutrients are stored within the living vegetation rather than in the soil itself. Once forests are removed, careful management becomes essential to maintain soil fertility. Far to the north or high in alpine environments, we encounter cryosols. These soils contain permanently frozen ground known as permafrost beneath a thin surface layer that thaws during summer. Cryosols store enormous quantities of organic carbon accumulated over thousands of years. As global temperatures rise, thawing permafrost has become a major concern because it may release significant amounts of greenhouse gases into the atmosphere. Finally, the WRB recognizes a group of soils that reflects humanity's growing influence on the landscape. Technosoils are soils created or extensively modified through human activity. They occur in reclaimed mining areas, restored industrial sites, urban green infrastructure, engineered landscapes, and ecological restoration projects. Far from being merely artificial soils, technosoils demonstrate how scientific knowledge can help rebuild functioning ecosystems on previously degraded land. They represent an important component of sustainable development and ecological restoration. Although these soil groups differ greatly in appearance, origin, and function, they all illustrate a fundamental principle. There is no single best soil. Each soil evolved under particular environmental conditions and performs functions that are uniquely suited to those conditions. River floodplains support intensive agriculture. Peatlands regulate climate through carbon storage. Tropical soils sustain some of the world's richest forests. Grassland soils produce much of the world's grain. Polar soils preserve ancient carbon reserves. Restored soils demonstrate humanity's capacity to repair damaged landscapes. Understanding this diversity enables us to make better land use decisions. It helps us match agriculture to suitable soils, conserve ecosystems that provide irreplaceable environmental services, restore degraded landscapes, and strengthen resilience in the face of climate change. The diversity of soils mirrors the diversity of life itself. Every landscape tells a different geological and ecological story, and every soil reflects thousands of years of interaction between climate, living organisms, rocks, topography, and time. In the next section, we will bring these ideas together and examine why soil diversity is not simply an interesting scientific concept, but one of the foundations of biodiversity, ecosystem services, climate resilience, and sustainable development. Throughout this lesson, we have explored soils as living ecosystems, examined how they form, and discovered the remarkable diversity of soils found across the world. The final question we must now ask is perhaps the most important of all. Why does soil diversity matter? The answer lies in the extraordinary range of ecosystem services that different soils provide. Every soil has evolved under specific environmental conditions. As a result, different soils possess different physical, chemical, and biological characteristics that influence the way ecosystems function. Some soils are exceptionally fertile and sustain intensive agriculture. Others regulate water across entire river basins. Some store vast quantities of carbon, while others provide habitat for highly specialized communities of plants, animals, fungi, and microorganisms. Together, this diversity forms one of the Earth's most important natural assets. Food security begins with healthy soils. Different crops thrive under different soil conditions, and matching agricultural practices to appropriate soils improves productivity while reducing environmental degradation. Conserving soil diversity therefore strengthens the resilience of food systems as climate conditions continue to change. Water security is equally dependent upon healthy soils. During rainfall, well-structured soils absorb water, replenish groundwater, and reduce surface runoff. They act as natural filters, improving water quality while moderating floods during wet periods and maintaining river flows during droughts. In many ways, healthy soils function as vast underground reservoirs that regulate the movement of fresh water through entire landscapes. Soil diversity also supports biodiversity. Different soil environments create different ecological niches, allowing distinct plant communities and the countless organisms associated with them to flourish. From alpine meadows to tropical rainforests, from grasslands to wetlands, the remarkable diversity of life above the ground is closely linked to the equally remarkable diversity of soils beneath it. Perhaps nowhere is the global importance of healthy soils more evident than in their role in regulating the Earth's climate. Healthy soils represent one of the planet's largest terrestrial carbon reservoirs. Through photosynthesis, plants remove carbon dioxide from the atmosphere and transfer much of that carbon below ground through roots and organic matter. When soils remain healthy and undisturbed, significant quantities of this carbon can remain stored for decades, centuries, or even millennia. Healthy soils also increase the resilience of ecosystems to climate change. They improve water availability during droughts, reduce erosion during extreme rainfall, support diverse vegetation capable of adapting to environmental change, and provide stable foundations for sustainable agriculture and ecosystem restoration. For these reasons, protecting soil diversity has become one of the most important nature-based solutions for addressing climate change. A powerful example of this principle can be found in one of the world's most remarkable ecosystems, peatlands. At first glance, peatlands may appear unremarkable. They occupy only about 3% of the Earth's land surface and are often viewed simply as waterlogged landscapes. Yet beneath their surface lies one of the planet's greatest natural treasures. Over thousands of years, waterlogged conditions slow the decomposition of plant material. Instead of fully breaking down, layer upon layer of organic matter accumulates to form peat. This process creates soils that are exceptionally rich in stored carbon. Although forests are widely recognized for capturing carbon, peatlands collectively store even more carbon than all of the world's forests combined. Much of this carbon has remained safely locked underground for thousands of years. Peatlands also perform many other essential ecosystem functions. They regulate water by storing rainfall and releasing it gradually into surrounding rivers and groundwater systems. They provide habitat for rare plants, birds, amphibians, insects, and countless microorganisms specially adapted to wetland environments. In many regions, peatlands also reduce downstream flooding while improving water quality. However, these valuable ecosystems are also highly vulnerable. When peatlands are drained for agriculture, forestry, or development, oxygen enters the peat and accelerates decomposition. Carbon that has been stored safely for millennia begins to return to the atmosphere as carbon dioxide. In dry conditions, drained peat becomes highly susceptible to fire, releasing even larger quantities of greenhouse gases while destroying unique ecosystems. Fortunately, peatlands also demonstrate the power of ecological restoration. Across many countries, restoration projects are re-wetting drained peatlands, rebuilding wetland vegetation, restoring wildlife habitat, and gradually re-establishing the natural processes that allow peatlands to store carbon and regulate water once again. These projects illustrate how protecting and restoring healthy soils can simultaneously support biodiversity conservation, climate change mitigation, and water security. The lessons from peatlands apply far beyond wetlands themselves. Every soil performs functions that have evolved over thousands of years. Protecting soil diversity means protecting the ecological processes that sustain agriculture, biodiversity, clean water, and climate resilience. It means recognizing soils as natural infrastructure, living systems that quietly support nearly every aspect of life on Earth. As we conclude this section, one message stands out clearly. Soil diversity is not simply a scientific classification. It is one of the foundations of resilient landscapes, sustainable economies, and healthy societies. Understanding, conserving, and restoring soils is therefore not only an environmental responsibility, it is an essential investment in our shared future. In the final section of this lesson, we will review the key concepts you have learned and apply them through a knowledge check and a practical land use scenario. As we conclude this lesson, let us reflect on the key ideas that bring everything together. We began by challenging a common misconception that soil is simply dirt beneath our feet. Instead, we discovered that soil is one of Earth's most complex living ecosystems, supporting billions of organisms that work continuously to sustain life above and below the surface. We then explored how soils develop through the interaction of 5 natural factors: climate, parent material, organisms, relief, and time. These factors work together over centuries and millennia to produce the remarkable diversity of soils found across our planet. To understand that diversity, we introduced the World Reference Base, or WRB, the internationally recognized framework that allows scientists and land managers to classify and compare soils using a common scientific language. We also examined representative soil groups from around the world and saw that each has unique characteristics, ecological functions, and management requirements. From fertile river floodplains and productive grasslands to tropical forests, peatlands, volcanic landscapes, polar regions, and restored urban environments, every soil tells a different environmental story. Perhaps the most important lesson is that healthy soils provide far more than a foundation for plant growth. They regulate water, recycle nutrients, store carbon, sustain biodiversity, support food production, and strengthen the resilience of ecosystems in the face of climate change. Ultimately, soil diversity is natural capital. It underpins biodiversity, food security, clean water, climate resilience, and sustainable development. Protecting and restoring healthy soils is therefore not simply an environmental objective, it is a strategic investment in the long-term well-being of both nature and society. In the final part of this lesson, you will have the opportunity to apply these concepts through a short knowledge check and a practical land use scenario that brings together everything you have learned. You have now reached the final section of Lesson 1. Before moving forward, take a moment to reflect on what you have learned and apply these ideas to a practical situation. Our first question asks why soil diversity is important for climate resilience. As you consider the 4 options, remember that soils are far more than growing media. Different soil types possess different physical, chemical, and biological characteristics. These characteristics determine how effectively soils store carbon, regulate water, support biodiversity, recycle nutrients, and sustain agricultural production. The correct answer is that different soil types support different ecosystem services, biodiversity, water regulation, carbon storage, and agricultural productivity. This principle lies at the heart of modern soil science. Diversity above the ground depends upon diversity below the ground. Healthy ecosystems are built upon healthy soils, and resilient landscapes depend upon maintaining the wide variety of soils that have developed over thousands of years. Let us now move to a more realistic challenge. Imagine you are advising a regional government responsible for balancing agricultural development with biodiversity conservation and climate resilience. The landscape contains fertile fluvisols along a river, carbon-rich histosols in wetlands, feral sols supporting tropical forests, and a degraded mining site that could be restored using technosols. Several development options are available. One approach would maximize short-term agricultural production by converting every landscape to farmland. Another would drain wetlands to increase cultivated land. A third would focus only on restoring the mining site while ignoring the surrounding ecosystems. Each of these options overlooks the fact that different soils perform different ecological functions. The most sustainable strategy is to protect peatlands and forests, cultivate the soils best suited for agriculture, and restore degraded land wherever possible. This approach recognizes that sustainable development is not about using every hectare in the same way. Instead, it matches land use to the natural strengths and limitations of each soil type. River floodplains are highly productive agricultural landscapes because fluvisols are naturally fertile. Peatlands should be protected because histosols store enormous quantities of carbon, regulate water, and support unique biodiversity. Tropical forests growing on feral soils should be managed carefully because these ecosystems depend upon rapid nutrient cycling and long-established ecological processes. Degraded mining landscapes provide opportunities for technosol restoration, demonstrating that scientific knowledge and ecological engineering can successfully rebuild functioning ecosystems. This systems perspective is becoming increasingly important as governments, businesses, and communities respond to climate change and biodiversity loss. Decisions about agriculture, forestry, urban development, infrastructure, watershed management, and ecological restoration all depend upon understanding the capabilities and limitations of different soils. Congratulations on completing Lesson 1. You have explored soils not simply as geological materials, but as living ecosystems that support biodiversity, regulate water, recycle nutrients, store carbon, and sustain human civilization. You have learned how soils form, how scientists classify them, why different soil groups exist, and how soil diversity strengthens climate resilience and sustainable development. Perhaps the most important message to carry forward is this: healthy soils are not merely a natural resource. They are living natural infrastructure that supports nearly every terrestrial ecosystem on Earth. As we continue to the next lesson, our perspective will expand from soils to the broader concept of biodiversity. You will explore how genetic diversity, species diversity, and ecosystem diversity interact to create resilient landscapes capable of adapting to environmental change. The story of biodiversity begins beneath our feet, but it extends across forests, rivers, grasslands, wetlands, mountains, oceans, and ultimately the entire biosphere. Thank you for completing Lesson 1. I look forward to welcoming you to Lesson 2, Biodiversity and Ecosystem Functioning.